Hi, I'm Jolene and I'm here with my colleague Seth, and we're going to talk about trials. This is the first of a series of video that we'll do in this topic, and we're going to talk about the things that we've learned about conducting trials in the last 2 years since the pandemic has started. So Seth, there's a number of things that have changed obviously during the pandemic about conducting trials as a response to the pandemic. Do you think that many of these things are going to stick around, or are we going to go back to the old ways once the pandemic is through?
I definitely think that a lot of these changes are here to stay, and in particular, I think remote trials done via Microsoft Teams or Zoom are here to stay. At the end of my last trial, which was just a few weeks ago, which was done remotely, the judge said to us that he believed that remote trials were here to stay because he thought they were more efficient and more effective, both for the court and for the lawyers. So I think, without a doubt, we're going to be seeing remote trials well beyond the end of COVID.
And how about you tell us just a little bit about the trials that you've done since the pandemic?
Sure. So I've done 3 trials since March of 2020. All of them have been so-called remote trials. The first was actually in a Florida state court in the mid-October of 2020. Then just a few weeks later, you and I did a trial via Microsoft Teams in the Manhattan Supreme Court in the commercial division. And then finally, just a few weeks ago, I finished a trial that I was just discussing where we spent 6 days on Microsoft Teams. And so, between all 3, we've had a lot of trial experience remotely over the past 2 years. What experience have you had over the past 2 years?
So there was the one trial that you just mentioned that we did together. I think actually that may have been like the first remote trial in the Manhattan commercial division. And then I just finished in March actually in-person jury trial in federal court in the Eastern District of New York and Brooklyn. So, before we get into the details of this, how about you tell us generally what you think are some of the benefits of a remote trial?
I think there's 2 large categories of benefits for remote trials. The first is really logistical, not having, both for the attorneys, the witnesses, your clients, not having to travel to the court in the morning, especially for clients or witnesses who might have to go through airport-style security before they get to the courtroom, not having to do that, and instead just showing up at their attorney's office, or even doing it from home is a huge advantage. And it's also an advantage for the attorneys at the end of the day, not having to go back to their office, but being in their office to start and being able to start preparing for the next trial day. And then the second type of benefit that I think there is to remote trial is just frankly having everyone and everything in front of you on a screen. When you're doing a remote trial, you see the witness, you see the judge, you see opposing counsel all in their little Zoom box. You might, in many cases, see the exhibit right in front of you. And so if you know how to take advantage of that, I think that it's a really great way to take advantage of remote trials. So having just done an in-person trial, what would you say has changed about in-person and in particular jury trials since March of 2020? I
think a couple of things. I think for lawyers, you do need to think about what the pandemic means for selecting your jury. The process itself has changed a little bit, at least in the EDNY, and we'll talk about that. And then there might be some strategic considerations that lawyers need to think about, like, would you be okay with having a fully vaccinated jury? And then for the trial itself, I would say that a lot of it was, the same as it was before, but there were a few things, you need to rely on technology probably even more than before, because passing around documents is really something that everyone is trying to stop. And I think that's going to stick around. And then you're going to be probably further away from your witness, from the jury, from everyone else than what you would have been used to before the pandemic. And that takes some getting used to, so we'll talk about that as well.
And having done both a remote trial and a jury trial in the last 2 years, do you prefer one over the other?
I definitely agree with the things that you've mentioned, the benefits of remote trials. I could see, however, that for some types of cases, some types of clients, you would likely sacrifice too much doing it remotely, and that there are some cases where you probably would want to fight to have it be an in-person trial, even if a bench trial. So we'll talk about that as well.